You curiously watched as Derek laid his towel on the floor, then sat down on it, crossing his legs. Nicholas plopped down on the towel right next to him and started on one of his pizza crust corners. You decided to stay standing with George. You decided to sit down on your towel instead. I mean, I feel good hanging out with George. Like, I can see that I'm not gonna fight Nicholas with. I don't want to fight over Derek with Nicholas, especially because I don't want to leave George hanging, and I like George a lot. You decided to stay standing with George. You didn't mind eating on your feet, but you also didn't give yourself much time to think about it. Taking a big mouthful, you focused on filling your belly instead. Finally, Mr. and Mrs. Suarez got their slices of pizza. They stood in the living room in between the spots their sons had taken. So, how did you spend your day while we were out? We did lots of things. In between taking big bites of pizza, the Suarez family started taking turns telling stories about their day. Nicholas recounted the events of the day with the most enthusiasm. Even though they were the same plot points from his brother's stories and the ones you witnessed firsthand, from his perspective, the events were almost mythically amazing. It's really cool seeing the world through the eyes of a child. Storytelling was hungry work, so the slices didn't last long at all. The food was chipped away piece by piece until everyone was stuffed. Nicholas lay down on the floor, limbs stretched out and still wrapped in his towel. He was completely tuckered from the day. Mr. Suarez plucked him off the floor and held him under one arm. Bath time. Come on, Junior.
Yes, Dad.
Yes, Dad. Nicholas accepted his fate and his arms hung limply down. George crumpled up his paper towel into a ball and tossed him into the trash. He followed his dad.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gregorio. Mrs. Suarez watched them go with gentle affection in her gaze. She patted her husband's shoulder as he passed by and then strolled over to you and Derek. And thank you for a good day's work. I appreciate you both taking care of Nicholas and George today. Her cheeriness reminded you so much of Derek's. She pointed with her thumb over her shoulder. Dad and I will take them from here. Thanks, Mom. You could see the wave of relief wash over him as clearly as the actual water you had just swam in. I'll keep an ear out for the phone, Pamela said. She'd call when they're on their way here to get Hark. Okay. After that, Mrs. Suarez excused herself to go help get George and Nicholas ready for bedtime. When she disappeared down the hall, Derek leaned back on the palms of his hands. He lazily rolled his head in your direction.
Hey.
We can get dressed again. Then would you want to hang out in my room until your mom gets here? Yes! I get to have time with Derek all to myself. Sounds like a plan to me. You can get changed first. He stretched his legs out on the floor while he stood up. You could feel a slight I almost said acne. Feel a slight acne in your muscles. Oh geez. A slight ache in your muscles from the day's activities. It wasn't bad. You'd given your all during your babysitting adventure. Gathering your things up in your arms, you left to get changed. It wasn't long before you and Derek went over to his room for some siblingless free time. At last, this is how I'm rewarded. Oh, I love Derek's room. I love it. Derek opened his bedroom door and gestured for you to lead the way. You went in and he followed close behind, shutting the door once more. Your eyes widened as you scanned the small space. Usually you were outside when you hung out with Derek, so this was the first time you'd been inside his room. That's right, because when we slept over to his place, we didn't go into his room at all. We stayed in the living room. That's consistency, folks. Within reach of his neatly made bed was a bookshelf filled with novels. Various scattered soccer balls and footballs stuck out around the books and furniture. Things were arranged and organized with the same care Derek put into most things he did. If there was more time, you were sure there were tons more trinkets and treasures to spot here, like a game of I Spy. It wasn't big, but Derek made the most of his small piece of the world. Your room is cool. There are a lot of footballs and soccer balls in here. Are you sure you have enough soccer balls and footballs? You felt nervous being here. This is amazing. You quietly continued to look around. I'm just gonna say, my gut reaction would be to say your room is cool. Your room is cool.
Really?
Really? Because that's what I was thinking when I first saw it. Bashful, Derek scratched the side of his neck. He cheerfully watched you look over his things until it clicked. Whoa, we've never hung out in my room before, huh? Nope, it's the first time. My first time, Derek. That's kind of weird to think about.
Sorry.
But anyway, sorry, I don't have any chairs in here. You can sit on my bed if you want. Don't worry, there's a ton of places to sit in the living room, so this balances things out. Derek chuckled at that. Still, he felt a bit awkward and rubbed at the back of his neck. Thanks for offering your bed, though. You stayed standing. You sat on the edge of his mattress. You laid down across his bed. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I would sit on the edge of the mattress. After the busy day you had, it was without a doubt nice to relax on something soft. Derek's expression brightened since you took him up on his offer. Derek crossed over to the foot of his bed and sat there on the end of it. His jaw stretched open in a huge yawn that he quickly covered with his hand.
Good job, team.
Ooh, Derek's coming up closer to us. I'm wondering if that was purposeful, that they moved his sprite up more forward. Phew, we're finally done. There was no missing the proud satisfaction burning in his green eyes, but you could also consequently see the places where he was wilting. Sometimes you kind of worried about how he threw himself wholeheartedly into things all the time. It was nice spending the day babysitting. How often do you babysit? I'm glad that's over. I hope I was at least helpful today. Derek, don't ask me to watch those kids again, you tease. You nod along with his words. I hope I was at least helpful today. Definitely. His whole demeanor lit up as he pressed the palm of his hand into the mattress and leaned slightly in your direction. An embarrassed blush rose on your cheeks. Seriously, Hark, you were super helpful. Today was the easiest babysitting has ever been, and the most fun. Oh, really? Yes, really. Well, maybe I'll help. Maybe I'll be able to help again. Derek stretched his arms high in the air and yawned again. His eyelids drooped as he turned towards you. Gradually, the carefree warmth faded from his demeanor. His face fell into a quiet frown when his hands had returned to his lap.
You don't have to.
You don't have to do it again, Hark. Whether it's a good time or a bad time, it's just a lot of time, and you have your own things to deal with. Your brows bent at that. Tilting your head, you couldn't help but think about how much of Derek's days went to his brothers. It definitely didn't seem to match how things were with your sister and you. Definitely not. But then, as if summoned by your thoughts about him, the bedroom door creaked open just enough to let a giggling Nicholas slip in. He threw his hands in the air. I'm dressed! With a loud thud, the door swung fully open and George marched in. With an extremely annoyed scowl, he put his hands on his hips. Nicholas, we're playing in the living room, not Derek's room. Thank you, George, for trying to watch out for your older brother to have some him time. Have some Derek time. George reached for his younger brother, but Nicholas scurried up onto the bed. He warily peeked at George from behind Derek's shoulder. Derek notably didn't say a single word, nor did he appear surprised about the intrusion at all. The only movement he made was a light pat on the mess of hair on Nicholas's head, like usual. What wasn't usual was the distant look on his face. He'd accepted the reality at hand, but did not welcome it. Mr. and Mrs. Suarez crowded into the room next. Excuse us. Sorry, Derek. He slipped away in a flash. Yeah.
No more.
Come on, Nicholas. Let Derek and Hark have some peace. The youngest Suarez stubbornly clung to Derek's arm, his cheeks puffed out angrily. Nicholas, go hang out with Mom and Dad. Don't you want to see them too? They missed you today. Don't you want to see Mom and Dad too? Come on, Derek. He's very, very attached to the hip to his brother. Nicholas loosened his grip as he shifted to get a better look at his big brother. Derek sighed spiritlessly. I do, but I have a friend over right now. I'll spend time with Mom and Dad, and you later. I like this. I love how Derek, he is such a giving, generous brother. You know, not only with his personal belongings, but with his time. But he knows when to, draw the line and say, Nicholas, look, buddy, I love you and I'm glad I get to spend time with you, but I have a guest over, and my guest doesn't get to see me nearly as often as you do. So it's fair. It's all fair for me to have a little bit of time to devote to my friend. Now, of course, a 6-year-old is not going to understand that. The 6-year-old is going to feel like, no, like you don't need to do that, or you should be hanging out with me all the time. They're not going to get it. So it's nice that Derek at least is trying to put boundaries, so that I don't feel left out, because I feel like he could easily do that, and so I admire a lot with him doing that. Nicholas bent forward and grasped Derek's pant leg. He brought out the big guns and stared up at him with his most pitiful eyes and a matching pout. Right now, we're struggling in real life right now because my son does show favoritism towards me versus his other dad, which is, of course, super common. That is not unusual at all. And it was more common, like, months ago, maybe a year ago. He definitely favored me more than his dad. And so he was very clinging to me. And so I tried to make it a point to draw that line on a regular basis and is like, it's time for you to spend time with your daddy. Like, your other daddy. You know, I love you, son, but you also need to spend some quality time with your other parent too. You can't just stay attached to me the whole time, because that's not good. And it's hard for them to understand that. So, but you kind of have to teach them that. You kind of have to let them know that they can be okay not attached to your hip the whole time. It just helped them a little bit with their independence. It's a balance. You know, you want to be able to spend as much time with them as you can and then show that you love spending time with them. But they also have to know that the world doesn't revolve around them. So, you know, Derek does what he's supposed to. You can be like that now, Nicholas. Don't be sad. It's been a happy day. Well, I'm not surprised this happened. You sank down feeling awkward about the situation. You rubbed your eyes in his frustration. You know, Derek does what he's supposed to. You can be like that now, Derek. This feels like an attack, a personal attack. You know, Derek does what he's supposed to. You can be like that now, Nicholas. I feel like that would be an attack. I'm not surprised this happened. Don't be sad. It's been a happy day. Nicholas immediately whipped his head at your direction. He clearly had forgotten that you were even still there. Right? Feeling more awkward by the second, you paused while the youngest Suarez did nothing but stare. Eventually, you shrugged. I had fun. I thought we all did, and we're all still here together, so there's no need to be sad when we're nearby in other rooms. Tears started welling up, and when he turned back to his big brother, Nicholas's jaws clenched as he tightened his grip on his brother's leg.
End of discussion.
Nicholas, we're reading a story right now. Yeah, I'm glad the parents put their foot down. Nicholas angrily shook his head as she advanced across the room. She unapologetically peeled her smallest child off of Derek. The young boy let out a high-pitched whine for the entire extraction. They have to learn, that they don't always get to have what they want. That's life, kiddo. Even at 6 years old, you have to learn that. The world, your parents, of course, love you. But the world does not revolve around you. And the sooner that your parents can teach you that, the better off you will be. Trust me. George frowned sympathetically over the confrontation while Derek winced at the noise. When the deed was done, the middle son followed his mom out of the room. You could still hear Nicholas's piercing cry as he was carried away. I'm also glad that George, helped with that too. I'm very sorry about the interruption. Continue as you were. None of us were even here. I'm glad the parents recognize that too. I'm glad they recognize, Derek put in the time to babysit the kids, and yes, when your kids are that young, they don't understand that, they don't realize that, and it's natural for kids to be self-absorbed, and dare I say selfish. It's natural. They're just kids. They're just experiencing life. So you kind of have to help teach them gradually. He gave the both of you an encouraging smile before carefully shutting the door again. It was finally silent. Derek kept an eye out until he honestly believed that there wouldn't immediately be another sibling disaster. When he deemed it safe, he let out a quick sigh and attempted to choke back a harsher groan. I can see how frustrated he is. Derek flopped back against the mattress with another huff and stretched his arm out at his sides. His arms twitched and his fingers curled into fists. There's never any privacy here. How am I still having to deal with things even after spending almost the whole day with them? Yeah, he loves his brothers so selflessly. And I'm glad that we can see that Derek has his limits, as he should. He should have his limits. He should feel angry and frustrated for stuff like this. You held your tongue, waiting patiently for him to get it all out. Derek muttered grievances under his breath with a harsh glare aimed at the ceiling for a good minute and screwed his mouth shut. I'm sorry, Derek. I think you've done a really good job with everything. It's definitely rough. And I thought Elizabeth could be difficult to deal with. At least your brothers don't think they're the boss like Elizabeth. You don't know what to say. I'll say, it's definitely rough. I think you've done a really good job with everything. I'll say I'm gonna sympathize with him. It's definitely rough. The bulk of his anger punched out of him with another sigh. Derek rolled his head in your direction and cracked a weak smile. You tried to match it, wishing there was something more that you could do to help. A tiny laugh shook him. It really is. Even his breath, Derek folded his arms across his chest and squeezed his eyelids shut. You could tell by the tension in his face that he was still bothered. He was thinking hard, searching for something.
Man.
I can make this work. His low mumble was followed by a pause that had you intrigued. And then he jumped forward so that he was sitting upright again. The grin you were so used to seeing was back in full force. Hark, want to go back to the pool? Nobody's going to be there this late, and my bros are not going to be able to leave the house. We don't have to get in or even change clothes. I think it'd be just kind of a nice place to talk and that sort of thing. I would love that. Avoiding your gaze, Derek nervously rubbed the back of his head. You could tell he was trying his hardest to be nonchalant, but he wasn't exactly succeeding. I like the way you think. All right. Derek leapt up to his feet and turned, holding a hand out for you to take. Chuckling, you gripped his hand tightly. Chuckling, you got up on your own. Now I'll grip his hand tightly. Derek squeezed you back and helped pull you to your feet. Let's go. The door slowly creaked open as Derek peeked out. Double-checking that the coast actually was clear, he gave you a thumbs up. I don't see Nicholas. I think we're good. You returned his thumbs up, silently hoping that this wasn't the calm before the storm. Derek led you into the living room where you found his dad and George sitting together on the couch. Hello. Mom has Nicholas in his room, enraptured in another exciting session of story time. Good. Hark and I were going to go down to the pool to hang out. Is that okay?
Of course.
Of course. He chuckled, knowing exactly what Derek was trying to accomplish. George was perfectly happy where he was with his dad, so he waved goodbye to you both. Don't keep Hark out too late. I won't, thanks, Dad, Derek whispered with complete confidence. You gave your appreciation in an equally hushed tone. Thank you, Mr. Suarez. The last thing either of you wanted was to alert the youngest Suarez that anything fun was happening without his knowledge, so you both silently slipped out of the apartment. Once you were free from the condo's walls, Derek's excitement was palpable. You picked up the pace and raced to the pool gate. For the third time in a single day, you and Derek stepped foot on the condo complex's private pool deck, but you soon realized you hadn't seen everything it had to offer yet. Under the cover of night, the pool was completely aglow with lights set into the bottom. This is gorgeous. The bright blue struck you as inviting breaths of steam drifted off the top of the water, whispering how warm it was. Ooh, it's a heated pool. I would have been all for the heated pool, actually. The closed-in space was clear of any other people, and it had been like that for a while, considering the stillness of the pool. Not a single ripple disrupted its aquamarine surface. Here you'd have peace and privacy. Derek was drawn to the water like a moth to a flame. He wordlessly rolled up his jeans and tugged off his sneakers and socks, then dunked his feet right into the pool, up to the middle of his calf. He stretched and wiggled his bare toes in the comfortable embrace of the heated pool in a summer night. You joined Derek at the edge. And you dipped your own feet as well. And you sunk a hand into the water. And you sat by the side of the pool. No, I'll dip my feet in as well. You removed your own shoes and let your feet soak in the pool. It was as pleasant as its sparkling appearance promised. The water had none of the slight chill that the air did. It was the perfect amount of heat. Derek wrapped both his hands around the smooth tile edge and tilted back. One of his legs kicked up as his back drifted down, like his upper and lower body were each one side of a seesaw. He grinned playfully at you.
But
So, what were we talking about? Oh, you smooth dude. You are so smooth, Derek. What are we talking about? Where were we? Oh, I don't remember. Well, you were saying you couldn't manage to put any words together in a spot. Oh, I don't remember. Well, you were saying that you liked having my help, but it wasn't my job to watch your brothers, and I didn't have to do it again. Oh, yeah. He somnolently brought his torso back up until he was hunched over the water. He stared down at it. All his lightheartedness had disappeared in an instant. Things were already kind of a bummer before it got interrupted. That sucks. There wasn't any heart in it, but Derek managed to chuckle. A chuckle. There wasn't any heart in it, but he chuckled. Sorry for making my problems your problems. Derek, that's what I'm here for. He dug his fingers into the side of his hair, scratching at it in frustration.
it doesn't matter.
I don't even know what my problem is. They came in the room for 5 seconds. I'm so dramatic. Yeah, but I mean, after... This is a constant thing. It wasn't just that. It's just when it's constant and it's every single day and you were with them the whole day, any straw can break the camel's back. Any straw. Derek, that's not dramatic, and it wasn't the only thing that happened today. Nicholas is dramatic. You're mild, you joked. You deal with a lot of problems. It annoyed me and I don't even live here. You lean closer to show you were here to listen. Derek, that's not dramatic, and it wasn't the only thing that happened today. Yeah. Derek crossed his arms tight and pushed them against the top of his legs. The blue water rippled around him as his legs moved against the pool wall. He pressed his heels into it. The pressure that had been only on the inside was coming out. It's just, the thing is, Nicholas and George need me all the time. And my parents need me because they need me. I don't want to let them down. I really don't, but it's hard. Every day it's like I'm going to mess up and disappoint somebody. Yeah. Pressure like a tip, drip, drip, that'll never stop. Whoa. Pressure that'll... yeah. Tip, tip, tick, till it just go pop. The pressure of the eldest. Preach, brother. The pressure of the eldest sibling. He bit his tongue and released his limbs from the locked positions they'd been stuck in. He couldn't scrub the furrow away from his brows.
Forget it.
Forget it. Everyone has stuff to worry about. It's not just me. Mom has to take care of them way more than I do, and Dad works a job pretty much the entire day. I admire you. You don't have to brush yourself off. I am going to make sure that he thinks of himself. Love yourself and love each other. Love yourself so you can love others. Your family is lucky to have you. So what if they do things too? You still deserve to be happy. It's not fair for you to think that. You place a supportive hand on his shoulder. I'll say, you don't have to brush yourself off. I don't know. He went silent, unmoved. Nicholas was the one who caused trouble, but somehow Derek had made himself the bad guy. It was upsetting, but Derek wasn't anywhere close to really being grown up. Of course he couldn't be perfect, even though he acted like he thought he should be. Derek, remember when your dad first came to the pool and you, George, and Nicholas were all so excited? You were just like your brothers. Even if you're in charge sometimes, you're still your parents' kid. You don't have to act like an adult, especially not with me. Finally, slowly and carefully, Derek dared to glance at you again. Thanks, Hark, for saying all that. His shoulders squished inward to frame his lowered head. He looked so much like a hopeful puppy that he could give even Nicholas a run for his money in the adorable face department.
Was it annoying?
It really doesn't bother you that I complain? And sometimes hanging out with me means helping out with 2 other kids? Actually, I find you complaining ridiculously refreshing and ridiculously attractive and sexy, Derek. Why? Because it makes you human. You know, you are like this guy who tries to be perfect. You're not perfect, but you try to be perfect. And you're willing to admit when you're not happy. You know, I feel like he's the kind of person who would not be open about this with just anyone. I don't think he would be vulnerable about this with just anyone. So the fact that he actually is like venting with me really touches me a lot. It touches me very deeply because I feel like he trusts that he can sort of share this burden with me. And I think that's really important for a relationship. It really doesn't bother you that I complain and sometimes hanging out with me means helping out with 2 other kids? For all the confidence Derek displayed, when push came to shove, he was pretty insecure about himself and what you thought of him. Not at all. Complain away. As long as you don't mind dealing with Elizabeth when you visit me. That's right. Derek, I love hanging out with you no matter what. I'll babysit as many times as you need. You nodded seriously. Derek, I love hanging out with you no matter what. Derek showed his full face to you. It was all lit up by the light shining through the water. The smile on his face was just as glittering. Well, I don't even want to be a pain, but it's really cool to have a friend who doesn't mind listening to me and being there. That's what friends are for? In good times and bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for. He didn't say that lightly. He only wanted to let himself be there for you and everyone else. Being somebody Derek could count on was special. His cheeks flushed just admitting it. But with the way your heart fluttered, you were sure your face was a match. Then his eyebrows furrowed mischievously, and just like that, he catapulted right off the tile edge into the pool. You gasped as if you were the one who suddenly got plunged underwater. Derek burst through the surface with a loud, gasping laugh. Yeah, no, not with my clothes. I hate the feeling of wet clothes. Oh my gosh, this is so triggering for me. The water is great. How wonderful. You're way too impulsive sometimes. Are you okay? You broke in laughter. You shook your head at Derek's spontaneous swim. Are you gonna get in trouble? You shook your head at Derek's spontaneous swim.
This is gonna be great.
Everything's gonna be good, Hark. I'm not an adult. That was true. You pushed yourself right off the side of the pool after him. Heck no, not in these clothes. You carefully lowered yourself over the edge. You splashed Derek from the ground. You watched him enjoy the water, staying dry yourself. Yeah. You rested back on the palm of your hands, gazing out at Derek's face. He flipped over and did backstrokes and circles. He huffed from lifting the weight of his soaked jeans with each kick. Oh, soaked jeans are the worst. Oh, Derek. Why, Derek? Why? It's okay. Oh, that's so... Oh, I hate being in soaked jeans. I hate being out in the rain with jeans. Ugh. That only made Derek more amused. It was definitely an unusual sight. Laughter and sloshing water brought the once stagnant pool to life. You and Derek still had the place to yourself and made the absolute most of it. But eventually Derek crawled up the stairs out of the pool. His baggy clothes poured out mini waterfalls with every step he took on land. Derek looked especially tiny with his drenched jersey draped over his frame. You got to your feet and walked over to Derek, not wanting to have to make the trip alone in that state. He gave you a thumbs up. Then he carefully tipped his head to the side and tapped his hands against his ears to get the water out.
Well...
All right, time to face the music. Having to go home dampened Derek's mood far more than the water on his body. He could do anything here, in the wide-open pool with you as his only companion. Going back to his family came with countless expectations and responsibilities, but it still had to be done. Yeah. You gave a small nod, readying yourself for whatever might happen when you arrived at the Suarez condo. Without another word, you collected your shoes and you left the little oasis behind. The two of you walked by side. You held each other's hands. His slippery fingers gripped you as tightly as they could. When you made it to the front door, Derek used a key from his pocket to open it. He hadn't forgotten to bring it, despite leaving under rushed and uneasy circumstances. Derek stood there in front of the unlocked door, just staring at it. Practical preparation was his forte. Making himself ready for bumps in the relationship was not. You didn't do anything wrong, Derek. You've got nothing to feel bad about. You've got nothing to feel bad about. They do. Remember that. That's a weird sentence. Yeah. He took in a huge breath through his nose and turned the knob. The living room was quiet when you went inside. George and Mr. Suarez had moved over to the kitchen and were busy putting together a puzzle. Mr. Suarez's shoulder blocked your view, so you couldn't see what the picture was supposed to be. Mrs. Suarez and Nicholas were nowhere in sight. You guessed they were still in the younger boy's bedroom. It was strange not to have someone cheer and shout when Derek walked through the door. There was a feeling of absence. We're back. He announced himself with an absolute lack of enthusiasm. He might as well have been calling off bingo numbers to an empty room. That's a cool analogy. Mr. Suarez lifted his head and turned to face the both of you. At the same time, he eagerly pushed his chair away from the counter.
I see.
Thank you for coming home. The greeting he gave was so normal that it was weird, considering how Derek brought a bucket full of water absorbed into his clothes. Yeah, I'd be having a fit if I was his dad. George offered a typical family greeting of his own, not taking his eyes off the puzzle. He was either focused or avoiding the awkwardness.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Derek silently poked a bare big toe into the prickly entryway doormat. The mess Derek's foot was making was too much for the little mat to contain. Water leaked out from the edges. Derek's attempt to face his family was going equally smoothly. The bright pleasantries on Mr. Suarez's face softened into warmth. He followed through on the motion he started and got out of his chair. He crossed the living room to stand with the two of you at the front door. My hard-working son is always in demand. Our family needs to learn how to share, especially Nicholas. The last part was said with a little chuckle. Derek didn't smile from the compliment, but he did start to blush.
Excuse me.
Excuse us. A new voice came from the hall. Mrs. Suarez stood there with her hands on her hips. Peeking out from behind the skirt of her dress was a distinct, spiky nest of brown hair. Now that you're here, someone has something he wants to say to his big brother. Her words got George to actually turn away from the puzzle and watch the scene, but Nicholas remained hidden. Her encouragement wasn't enough. As always, he was waiting for Derek. You didn't need to tell Derek that, though. He knew it was far better than you. He shifted his weight on his feet and gave Nicholas an invitation.
Okay.
Okay then, what did you want to say?